Well, good morning. Breakfast with the Broker every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. We are at Pod Populi in Boca Raton, and we have a little different guest. It's not our normal guest or genre or whatnot, but I think for a changing market, it really is apropos. So, and now, by way of Delray Beach, Florida, she is the host of the 10th ranked podcast in the world on Amazon for combat sports shows called Skulls and Stilettos. She is the producer, interviewer, interviewee, and jack of all trades for Pod Populi. She's a TV producer. She graduated from Florida State University in psychology and art history. She's a wife, a niece. She's a lover, not a fighter. Well, sort of. She is Janine LaRussa Stella.
You have the best introductions of any podcaster ever. That was amazing.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on, and thank you for all you do for the podcast. The world of podcasting. So certainly appreciate it. So fighting, huh? How'd that happen?
It is the strangest story. If you would have told me that 3 or 4 years ago I would be hosting a combat sports show, I probably would have told you were nuts because it just wasn't in my vernacular at all. I never watched fighting. I'm kind of that girly girl that, I still cover my eyes when I watch a scary movie. It never was in my genre. And what had happened was I had a radio show back in 2020 called SoFlo Sass, where I interviewed businesses locally in South Florida. And then the pandemic hit in March. So I started my radio show in January. And in March, the world shut down. So a friend of mine, my very best friend, is a videographer for UFC Fight Pass. And he said, Janine, I need a favor. There's a fighting organization called Titan FC that's run and based out of South Florida, and they're at the Intercontinental in Miami, and there's no press, there's no family, there's no spectators allowed at the event because of COVID. I mean, it was very, very strict. We had Dynamic Wellness there on site testing for COVID because God forbid a fighter got sick and it would spread like a wildfire. So it was very intense. And so he said, do me a favor. Can you and your co-host come down to Miami and interview these fighters? They're new to the scene. They're fresh into a professional fighting organization. Just come to the weigh-ins, come to the fight, interview them, make them feel comfortable. And I thought, all right, yeah, I think this will be fun. So come to find out that the COO of the organization, his name is Lex McMahon, and his father is the late and great Ed McMahon from Star Search.
Oh, really?
So he was born and raised in California, military, he moved here, and just a really great guy. I met him. I fell in love. I said, you know what? I have to be part of this. And after my first event, I was hooked. And so then I became the girl who showed up at the fights with the microphone when the fighters were bloody and sweaty. And I would say, does your mom know you're doing this? Or I would say questions to them like, what do you eat after you weigh in and you've lost 20 pounds? Or are you angry? Like, are you hangry right now? I mean, the questions that I would ask are like a concerned parent. So I became kind of like the resident mom of the fighting world. And so now I still continue to go to all these different fights in South Florida. I love it. It's a great tight-knit community. Everyone kind of knows everybody, and we're all in it to win it.
It's funny because you put these fighters on pedestals, right? You look at them and, they're like, they're specimens, they're obviously fit, and, to fight, you have to be in the best shape of your life. And, the questions that you would want to know, or the answers you would want to know of those questions is like, okay, like how'd that happen? Like how'd you get into fighting? How'd you, you start, eating, and do you have a nutritionist? And a lot of these people obviously starting out doesn't have the money to actually
Correct.
go into that and such. So I'm sure it's a very interesting podcast, talking with all these fighters. I mean, there's so many fighting organizations now. And I mean, I remember UFC with Moist Gracie and all these other different fighters that were, coming into the sport. And fighting is a lot like our real estate market coming up here. As we talk about shifting market and changing real estate market, but you know, people don't realize what a real estate agent does. They think, they look at the social media and they say, "Wow, they sold it in 3 hours, and they sold it for more money, and wow, they make so much money, and all these different things." They didn't realize that we were a therapist, a Uber driver, a grocery picker upper, a bottle washer, whatever it is, right? So talk a little bit about, because as far as real estate, because you've had a lot of experience in real estate and such, and so experience in real estate and how it relates to kind of fighting and the interviewers or interviewees of those fighters.
1000%. And the way I can relate the two is very simple. And that has to do with branding. When you're a real estate agent, you're branding yourself, it's your marketing, whether it's a flyer or a postcard or a podcast or a billboard. Every realtor is trying to stand out in their community or in their area as, I've made it. I'm the go-to person you want to talk to. You can do business with me because you know, like, and trust me. And in the same realm with the fighting world, they're a brand. They have, now that social media is what it is today, they need to have a presence on social media. They need to have a good manager. They need to have a good team behind them. Where's their gym? That's clout and status right there. If you ask any fighter in South Florida what their gym is, I could tell you automatically who they're being trained by, because there's 4 or 5 down here that are spectacular, that breed the world's best fighters in the world. And so whether that's ATT Coconut Creek, ATT Sunrise, Sanford MMA, whether that's Goat Shed in Miami, which is the newest up and coming. I love that gym. It's in the Miami Design District. If I know, or MMA Masters in Hialeah, if anyone comes from those gyms, I know how they're being trained. They're being trained as killers, and they have a great backing behind them. Whether it's their branding, whether it's really getting out there and getting noticed, because you could be the best fighter in the world, but unless you have a team behind you, it's not going to happen. So, in relation to real estate, you might be a great real estate agent, but unless you have a good team behind you to back you, whether it's a great assistant, whether it's a great marketing team, whether it's a great mortgage broker that you trust that can help facilitate the deals, it's a very similar type of scenario.
And if you want to do a podcast, you need a great podcast team,
That's
right?
true. You need a good podcast team. Absolutely.
So if you are interested in podcasting, one of the, I would say, when you're looking at doing a podcast or branding, in any aspect, people get so scared of these niche markets, right? They're like, well, if I only concentrate on downtown Boca condos, well, what if they want a single family home in West Boca or West LA or whatever? Doesn't matter, because the niche marketing is what brings
Hmm.
people to you. And too often, I think we try and go after everyone, and what happens? We get no one, right? So I think niche marketing is certainly a big deal. And when you get into podcasting, having a niche podcast, talk a little bit about podcasting, because you know a thing or two about it. How I know how you kind of started, but how do you get involved in it? Because there's so many people now. I mean, it's about as it might be almost as popular as YouTube and doing videos now, because with the advent of Clubhouse and all these audio platforms, it seems to be doing really, really well.
Podcasting has become the largest platform in the world to get your voice heard, and everyone has a voice. If anyone has a business or a brand, they need to have a podcast. Why? Because it brings awareness. It's so different when, for example, you're a real estate agent and you're a broker. So if I want to do business, and there's thousands, real estate agents are a dime a dozen here in South Florida, right? So if I'm trying to choose the best real estate agent, if I know that one has a really great, prominent podcast, and I listen to that podcast and I start to get to know that host and how they think and how they do business, I'm going to want to work with them. So it's a platform to get to know someone on a different level before working with them. It's different than looking at their billboard on the side of the road. I see a photograph. I don't know anything about that person. So podcasting is a great platform to showcase your knowledge, your business, and really get your message out there so people feel comfortable doing business with you.
Yeah, you want to get your word out. Everyone has something to say, right? And it makes the world go round, as we're all different and we're all unique, and we have our unique things to say, I guess, or beliefs and opinions. And people are so scared of hearing their voice or seeing their face on video and things, but it really does go a long way, because the amazing thing is the real estate's hard enough, and there's so many obstacles to overcome, that when you deal with clients and or customers that don't like or don't connect with you on a personality, kind of, it's not worth it. So, like, to me, the podcast also attracts the people that you want to actually work with, and they want to work with you. So it's kind of like getting referrals over referrals over referrals, and just keeping that as business. So
And it's great because the podcasting community, people want to help other people grow their audience.
Absolutely.
So that's the best part. It's not like if you're a real estate agent and there's another real estate agency in your competition. The thing about that is, if you have a podcast and that real estate brokerage has a podcast, you can help connect each other's audiences and say, hey, if I'm not able to help you, maybe this person will. They're trusted, they're respected in the community. And that goes the same way with podcasting. There's so many different platforms and different types of podcasts that it's great to cross-reference and guest host on each other's shows for that reason.
Yeah, we do that a lot. I mean, from a collaboration, real estate itself, is designed to be very competitive, right? We have, I think the latest stats were 227,000 realtors for in the state of Florida. So and there's another 200,000 real estate agents, licensees, that are not members of the National Association of Realtors. So you're talking about nearly 500,000 licensees in the state of Florida trying to do business. Well, 52% don't do a single deal in a year, and 66% do 3 or less. So if you want to really kind of stand out and be different, have a podcast. Or, I know you have something to say. We all have something to say. We all, I mean, if you don't, then you probably shouldn't be in the real estate business, because
it's so true. Everyone's got a story. Everyone has a story. And what I love about podcasting is I feel that the confidence factor with anyone, if someone has anxiety, let's talk about mental health for a second. If someone has anxiety, or they have depression, or they've suffered with something, and they say, you know what, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to start a podcast. And a lot of times in the back of their mind, they may go into it thinking, who's going to want to listen to me? What do I have to say that's valuable and that people will want to hear? And that's the first thought that goes into their mind. But what people don't realize is you're having conversations all day long. They're just not recorded. So when you're on that platform to say what's on your mind, you're not filtered. You're not censored. You can say whatever you want. It's your party. People are coming to your party.
Yep.
And you can express yourself in any way that you'd like. And that's the beauty of podcasting.
One of these episodes, we have a folder, right? We have a folder of pretty much about 25 years of stuff, and of just people doing stupid things, like like just to give an example, we told someone to write a voided check, and they wrote a void on the check and sent it back to us. Like 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 things like that. Like and just I mean, and it's just funny things that we've seen over the last 25 years. And people always say well, I have you ever walked in when someone's having sex, or have you ever walked in
That's a
when
good
you
question.
know
Has that ever happened
yes, it has.
when you're showing a property?
Yeah, it was yeah. uh, and it wasn't anything you'd like to see. So
How long ago was
it was
that?
not. This was about 8 years ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago.
Awkward.
Maybe longer. I don't remember.
What's the
Yeah,
what does that
but
conversation go like? Gotta go. Like,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
we
run out
walked
the
right out.
door.
Yeah, I mean, just some funny things. Like, I mean, I fell in a pool. When I was texting. I fell on a coffee table because I was texting, and there was a low contemporary modern, like coffee table, and it was at the final walkthrough where my client bought the furniture as well, and I'm like, I'll replace that.
Oh my god, you can't make that up. That is
No,
insane.
I know.
Were you
So
okay?
yeah, I was okay. I mean, I was pretty embarrassed, but yeah, I was okay. I mean, there's a there's a long list, even worse things that have happened over the years. But it's funny because when you look at like new agents getting into the business, and they're looking at things being different or whatnot, the best thing to do is to really start a podcast. Because if you start a podcast, you're automatically getting some degree of audience, right? You're getting some degree of reach, and you're talking about it, which helps you in your business anyway. And I saw someone say, hey, I'm a brand new agent. Do a podcast. I think it's a great idea to figure out what you like, and how you want to get the word out, and what your story is, and go from there.
I love podcasting. I love real estate as well. I mean, as you know, I think I've spoken to you about this. I got my real estate license back in 2014, and I believe I'm voluntarily inactive. So I'm up to date on all my CE,
Mhm.
but my license is not hung in any particular brokerage, but I've always kept it up to date because as I've seen things changing throughout the years, I mean, who knows? It's never too late to start. I'm 40 years old. I might, dabble in it.
So and the funny thing is, a lot of people, like you said, dabble in it, right? Like one of my biggest pet peeves is dabbling in it and hanging your license. So like
So
to
it's good
me,
that I'm not doing
no,
it.
agreed. Yeah, I don't hire part time, or like dabblers, or or
No
hanging.
dabbling.
Like when we go in an interview and someone says, tell me about your place. I want to see if I can hang my license there. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like hanging is temporary. Like I don't want you to hang your license with me.
You
I
want me
want
there
I want
full
you to
time.
partner with me. I want you to be, in business with me, but I don't want you to hang your license with me. So, it's funny. It's just terms that have come over, and they're very popular terms. They're just
Well, I'm so happy I have never done that.
I'm glad you aren't dabbling as well in real
No, the
estate.
only time I hung my license was when I was actively doing real estate, but I was working for a developer at the time. So other than that, I haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, it's funny. Just a couple more stories that came to mind. I mean, I remember I went in and in a walkthrough, and the window panes were gone. The frames were there, but the window panes were gone, and there were hypodermic needles all over the place. And I turned to my buyer, and I'm like, all right. I called the listing agent, and the listing agent says, yeah, we have a little bit of problem. The son was a heroin addict, and he decided to sell the window panes for drugs. So we had no window panes. Like I've had like prostitution rings that I've gone in. I'm like, what the freak, So like crazy stuff. You don't realize when you go into these places, like, you know.
When you go home from a day like that, do you look at your wife and say, "You're not gonna like you're not gonna believe what happened to me today"? I
Yeah,
mean, what do you do at that point? I mean,
it's
it's
crazy.
crazy.
It's just yeah,
What's
just
the craziest thing that a buyer wanted that you just thought was absolutely ridiculous, like their demands that were just ridiculous?
um it's funny because I can't remember like one instance, but a lot of times they get fixated on like furniture or art paintings or things that like become personal, and the seller's like, listen, it's my grandmother's whatever, and the buyer's like, I don't care, I want it. And the seller's like, yeah, no. So I mean, like those kind of things get just, it
This
gets
was passed down for 200
right,
years in my
right, but
family.
I want it. But, you know, I want my Oompa Loompa,
That's
you know?
right. I want it now.
But it's funny because we do get fixated as we're negotiating, as we're buyers and sellers are getting, because it becomes an emotional transaction, right? I mean, the reason why you really have a real estate agent, yes, we expose properties, yes, we do a lot of things, but one of the things we do is we take the emotion out of the transaction, because it's a lot easier to speak to someone who is and tell them what you want than it is to speak to someone face to face who's making that decision, and you're speaking to a seller and a buyer. Doesn't work. One person's going to be stronger and one person's going to get taken advantage of. And so that's why you have real estate agents to take that emotional, connection, or
It's so true. I lived in my house for almost 30 years before I put it on the market a few years ago, and I was just a basket case when it came to the last week. I remember the buyers wanted to do a walkthrough like the day before we were supposed to be out. Granted, there's boxes everywhere. My whole life is in this was in this townhouse, and I had been in there my whole life, all my childhood memories, everything. And I remember freaking out, going, "Why do you want to come in the day before? I'm like, it's not bad enough that like I'm trying to get this perfect and clean and everything perfect for you." But I was just like, and my real estate agent was like, "Janine, it's not a big deal. It's like normal. They just want to make sure there's like progress." And I'm like, "I don't care. You don't know what your emotional state is until you sell the home that you were in your whole life. You just go through the gamut of emotions. You cannot predict
yeah.
what your mental state is when you go through that." And so I'm glad I got out of there. I mean, I left for several reasons. It was time, but the real estate agent is so important to take that emotion out.
What's the best who was the best interviewer or interviewee, I guess, that that either you were nervous or intimidated by, or just, just had a just knocked it out of the park?
Uh, Dean Thomas, I would say. Dean Thomas is a UFC, he's royalty, and he's also a commentator for UFC currently. So if you turn on a UFC fight on a Saturday night, he's there. He lives in Fort Pierce, born and raised, gives back to the community, coaches people, is just so dynamic and so intelligent. He's an actor, he's a voiceover. He's like a jack of all trades, and he's so intelligent and he's so wise. And every time I interview him, I just feel like I'm in the presence of someone that is just awesome. It's kind of intimidating. It makes me nervous. Like the little girl in me that's interviewing someone gets excited.
Have you ever interviewed like Ken Shamrock or Vitor Belfort or
Nope.
any of those? So I know it's funny because one of my real estate agents' daughter is a big time volleyball player, and Vitor Belfort's daughter is also on that team. And they and I always ask her, like is it intimidating? Like, like he's
Well,
in the stands, is like, I mean, he also is royalty, right? Like you put these people on pedestals because you don't know them, right? You're not having conversations every day with them.
Kamaru Usman's my absolute favorite fighter, and he just lost the
Yes,
welterweight belt to Leon Edwards last Saturday. And I've been following him forever, and I
that was
know
a
him.
crazy
It was a
kick.
crazy kick, and I've been obsessed like a little child. His brother won the heavyweight belt, Muhammad Usman, who now just won the Ultimate Fighter. So now he's got a UFC contract finally. But I met him when he was the heavyweight champion for Titan FC. And I remember Kamaru came to watch his brother fight and corner him. And I got so nervous because I'm so short. I wanted to take a picture with the two of them. And I always tell this story because it's so nerve-wracking to me that I did this. And talk about embarrassment. I'm so short and I go like this with each arm I'm holding onto Muhammad's waist and then I'm holding onto Kamaru's waist. And I'm so short that I grabbed Kamaru's butt. And I thought for a split second, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And then I thought, I'm doing this. And then I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So my husband is like filming because he's been my producer of my show for forever. And he's always filming. He's always doing the back end. And he's like, well, Janine, what do you want me to do? Like, it's Kamaru Usman. Like,
Right.
it's kind of like a hall pass. So anyway, that was my most embarrassing moment with my favorite fighter, and I'll never live it down.
That's funny. Well, where can we find you?
You can find us on Fight Mixer TV, which is on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. We use StreamYard just like you. It's a great platform.
Sure.
And I also think that you could look us up on Facebook.
Yes.
Facebook
yes, she
Live.
Can. Yes, she can. So I always end the conversation with two questions. What are you currently watching, and what's your favorite all-time series of all time?
I have so many. During the pandemic, I think we lived on Netflix. Ozark was great. I liked Startup. Did you ever see Startup?
I have not.
It takes place in Miami, and it's an internet dark web company that started in the boroughs of Miami, from Little Haiti to Little Havana, and a prominent Miami Beach Jewish family, and how the three of them intersect and build this empire. It's amazing.
Oh, really?
It's amazing.
Startup.
It's called Startup.
Okay.
And currently, I've watched everything. So watching reruns of Wentworth, which I love.
Oh yeah, sure.
Wentworth is great.
Yeah, I was told to watch 365. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey meets Scarface. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty slow, but it's very risque.
Is it on Netflix?
It is. It is.
365.
Yeah, I guess it started in 2020, and now there's 3 episodes. I mean, it was decent. I mean, it was risque and lots of sex and all of that. But I don't know. It's weird because you're expecting a little bit bigger. The storyline was pretty cool. The storyline is basically a mobster, basically kidnaps this girl, and she's got 365 days to fall in love with him. And if
I love it already.
and if she doesn't, then she's free. Yeah. So it's interesting. The storyline's really cool. I don't know, the execution was great, but it was entertaining at the very least.
That's
So
so
365,
cool.
yeah.
365. I'm
Yeah.
totally watching that tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Breakfast with the Broker, folks. You learn it all.
Well, listen, I thank you very much. You've been a podcast producer of ours, and we certainly appreciate all you've done. And if you are interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe you already have a podcast and you want to promote it properly, definitely check out Pod Populi in Boca, or one near you. And we certainly appreciate Breakfast with the Broker every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Good job, David.